My father looked me straight in the eye and said he couldn't walk me down the aisle, not because he was sick, not because he was out of town, but because my sister had a brunch party that morning.
And just like that, decades of hoping I could still be his daughter in any meaningful way vanished. He actually said, maybe Benjamin's dad could do it, or a friend's father. Someone will step in. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I smiled. Because in that moment, I realized something. If he couldn't make time for me on the most important day of my life, then maybe he never truly saw me at all. And what happened next? Well, he had no idea who I'd ask instead. But he was about to find out. Before I take you through what happened and how it unraveled everything, I need to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Adrienne Evans. I'm 33, a clinical trauma psychologist. I help people reclaim their lives after betrayal, abandonment, emotional warfare. What I didn't expect was to have to do the same thing for myself. Because for most of my life, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, stayed kind enough, proved myself enough, I could earn love. Especially from the one man I used to believe was my hero, my father. This story is not just about a wedding. It's not even just about my sister, or the lie that shattered everything. It's about how I stopped begging to be chosen and started choosing myself. But before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment. Have you ever felt like your family loved the idea of you more than the real you? Because that's where this begins. Not on my wedding day, but in a modest white house in Pennsylvania, years ago. Back then, our family looked picture perfect, middle-class neighborhood, clean-cut lawn. Dad wore a tie to work. Mom volunteered at the church. My older sister Vanessa and I shared a bathroom and nothing else. From the outside stable, loving, proud. But on the inside, quiet power games, one golden child, one leftover. Vanessa was always the star. Tall, confident, athletic. She brought home trophies. My dad bragged about her free throws like she was a rising Olympian. I was the quiet one, obsessed with books, sketching in the margins of my notebooks. I read more than I talked. But my mom saw me, every part of me. She was gentle, patient, always reminding me that I didn't have to be loud to be heard. When I was 10, she started teaching me how to bake. It wasn't just about cookies. It was about time, touch, presence. She was my person. And then suddenly she was gone. Pancreatic cancer took her within 6 months. One day she was making apple pie. The next, she was being wheeled into hospice. I was 12. After the funeral, everything changed. Not all at once, but in the small, aching ways that only kids really notice. Dad stopped packing my lunch, stopped looking me in the eye. He buried himself in work, stayed late, left early. And Vanessa. Vanessa stepped in, took over, made dinner, gave orders, told me to grow up. She was 15 and suddenly calling herself the woman of the house. And he let her? I tried to hang on. I showed Dad my report card, straight A's. He nodded, said good job, and went back to reading emails. He forgot my choir recital, missed my art showcase. But he always made time for Vanessa's meets, her games, her dinners. I remember one night, sophomore year, I was nominated for a statewide art scholarship. It was a huge deal. I asked Dad again and again to be there. And he promised. But that night, I sat alone in a folding chair as they announced my name. He never came. I got a text that said, "Congrats, something came up with a client." Later, I found out Vanessa had told him I didn't want him there, that I said it would make me nervous. And he believed her. No questions, no clarification, just belief. It broke something in me, but I didn't tell anyone. I just stopped asking. When I turned 18, I packed up my life and left for the University of Pittsburgh without looking back. I didn't want to be angry. I wanted to be free. College was the first time I felt oxygen in my lungs. And that's where I met Benjamin. He was an engineering major with soft eyes, steady hands, and the kind of presence that made you feel instantly safe. We met over spilled coffee and overdue readings and never really left each other's side after that. His family welcomed me like I'd always belonged. His mom, Laura, a retired kindergarten teacher with a steel spine and a golden heart, made me dinner. His dad cracked jokes. His little brother made playlists for our road trips. And then there was Jack, Benjamin's uncle, a retired federal judge. He never married, never had kids of his own, but he showed up to every family gathering like he belonged at the head of the table. Jack had this way of looking at you like he actually wanted to hear what you had to say. He didn't ask polite questions. He asked real ones. And when you answered, he listened. I didn't know it then, but Jack would one day be the one who gave me back everything I'd lost. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet kind, the kind that means everything. So years passed. Benjamin and I built our lives in Philadelphia. I became a psychologist. He worked in environmental engineering. We built a home, not just an apartment. Friends, rituals, hope. And then one night, 5 years after that first spilled coffee, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. And for the first time in forever, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this chapter would be different. Spoiler alert, it was. But not in the way I thought. Not in the way I hoped. Because just when everything felt safe, just when I thought the past was behind me, my sister made sure it wasn't. And my father.
Well?
He helped her do it. When Benjamin proposed, it was everything I ever dreamed of, except I didn't let myself dream too much. Not after growing up in a home where good things had strings attached. Still, he planned the entire day to perfection. We started with breakfast at the little cafe where we used to study together. He brought me to the art museum next, where he'd once stood for an hour while I explained how a Rothko painting made me feel like I was breathing underwater. Then dinner at the same Italian place where we'd celebrated my graduation years earlier. When the tiramisu arrived, so did the ring. A vintage sapphire with tiny diamonds curled around the edges. Simple, bold, just like me. He took my hands and said, "Adrienne, your strength, your heart, your mind, every part of you has made the last 5 years the best of my life. Will you spend the rest of it with me?" I said yes, without hesitation, without fear. For the first time in forever, I felt fully chosen, and I let myself have one quiet moment before reality crept back in. Because even as Benjamin was kissing my hands across the table, I could feel a shadow in the corner of my mind, a voice I hadn't heard in months, my father's voice. So the next morning, I called him. He answered with the usual cautious tone, the kind that said, "This better be quick." "Dad," I said, "I wanted to share something with you. Benjamin proposed last night." And I said yes. There was a pause, a long one. Then, well, congratulations. Like I'd told him I'd gotten promoted at work, not engaged to be married. He didn't ask how Benjamin did it. He didn't ask to see the ring. "No, I'm so happy for you. Just, have you picked a date?" I hadn't, but the moment I hung up, I realized I wanted to. I needed something to look forward to. Something mine. Vanessa's response came next. I sent her a photo of the ring, mostly out of obligation. The reply came instantly. "OMG, congrats, little sis. That ring is so pretty." I stared at the screen. It was overdone, sickeningly sweet. The kind of forced cheer that made you feel like you were reading fake enthusiasm in caps lock. And I knew beneath every exclamation mark, Vanessa was seething. She was 35, no long-term partner, no house, No degrees, just a perfectly curated online life and a long trail of failed relationships behind the scenes. And now, I had something she didn't.
A wedding?
Still, I tried not to let it poison anything. I focused on planning, on joy. We chose a date June 15th, far enough out to plan things right. Summer warmth, blooming gardens, clear skies at least. That was the hope. Benjamin's family was thrilled. His mother, Laura, practically cried when we told her. His father offered to help cover the bar tab. Even his younger brother started assembling playlists the next day. And my dad, I sent him a formal save the date card like everyone else. When we spoke on the phone a few weeks later, he sounded engaged, for once. "I've put it on my calendar," he said. "Vanessa mentioned it too." That threw me for a second, but I brushed it off.
"Actually, Dad," I added, hesitating, "I wanted to ask if you'd walk me down the aisle."
There was a pause. And then softly, almost surprisingly, he said, "I'd be honored." I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. That moment gave me hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this wedding could be more than a celebration. Maybe it could be a reset, a bridge. We threw ourselves into planning. The venue was a historic hotel in Philadelphia with a garden terrace that looked like it belonged in a Jane Austen novel. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers. I could picture everything, every seat, every flower. Benjamin's mom came to every fitting. She never once made it about herself, just asked what I loved, what made me feel like me. "You're going to be the most beautiful bride," she whispered once as I stepped out of the dressing room in a fitted lace gown. I blinked back tears. Laura reached for my hand and said, "Your mother would be so proud of you." It was the first time in years I had felt the absence of my mom that deeply. And somehow Laura filled the space without trying to replace it. Around that time, I grew even closer to Jack, Benjamin's uncle, the one who always had a thoughtful question, the one who never let silence feel heavy. He'd retired a few years earlier after decades as a federal judge. Quiet man, kind eyes, carried the weight of stories he'd never share, but somehow always knew when you were carrying something of your own. He once told me, after I showed him a campaign I ran for a nonprofit, "You have a rare talent. You don't just know what people want. You know what they need to feel." Coming from a man like him, that stuck.
At a family dinner one Sunday, Jack leaned over and said, "I've already booked a hotel for the wedding weekend. Wouldn't miss it for the world."
He meant it. You could hear it in the way he said world. And that contrast, between him and my own father, it started to feel sharper.
Dad never once asked about the dress, or the venue, or if I needed help. He said he'd come, said he'd walk me, but that was it.
Vanessa. She declined being a bridesmaid, claiming she was swamped with work, still said she'd attend, though, said it with that same thin smile.
Then, 5 months before the wedding, her posts started popping up.
Exciting things in June. Planning something big. I texted her once, "Hey, what's going on?" She replied, "Oh, just a work thing, nothing to worry about." But I started seeing venue scouting in her stories, taste testing, event hashtags. And I knew it before the phone rang, knew it before her syrupy voice spilled through the line like honey masking poison. "Adrian, I just wanted to let you know. I'm throwing my career party on June 15th. Broker celebration. It's kind of a huge deal. Just wanted you to hear it from me before it goes online." I couldn't even speak. "You got the save the date," I said eventually. "You knew my wedding was that day." Did I? Oh no, must have slipped past me. But don't worry, it starts at 11. Yours is at 4. Right. Dad can totally make both. The venue was 2 hours away. She knew. She always knew. I sat in silence after she hung up, my fingers still gripping the phone like I was expecting it to ring again. Like maybe she'd call back and say it was a joke. a miscommunication. But it wasn't. Vanessa had scheduled a career achievement party on my wedding day, on purpose. Not a week before, not the day after, the same exact Saturday, just 5 hours earlier. And the venue a country club nearly 2 hours away from our ceremony site. I knew what she was doing. She wasn't just throwing a party. She was forcing a choice, forcing our father to pick a daughter. And deep down, I already knew who he'd choose. Still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I called that night.
Dad, did you know Vanessa planned her celebration for June 15th?
Yes, he said, casually, like it was any other question. She mentioned it. Unfortunate timing, but her firm's proud of her. She finally hit her numbers. Big milestone.
Dad, that's my wedding day.
I know, sweetheart, but her event starts early. I'll go for a couple hours, then head straight to your ceremony. There was a pause. You're supposed to walk me down the aisle. I will. I'll make it work. We'll just have to be flexible. Flexible. Like I was a dentist appointment, or a conference call he could shuffle around.
Over the next few weeks, I tried to hold it together. I told myself it was fine. I focused on the things I could control, finalizing the flower arrangements, organizing the seating chart, confirming the photographer. My bridesmaids kept me grounded. Benjamin stayed by my side.
But slowly, the cracks showed. My dad began asking odd questions. Can you push the ceremony back an hour just to be safe? Or, do you really need me there for photos beforehand? Each question chipped away at me.
And then, 2 weeks before the wedding, the real blow came.
A phone call. Tuesday night? I knew, before I even answered, something was wrong.
Adrian, my dad began, I've been thinking about the logistics.
My stomach dropped. Vanessa's event. It's really important to her career. And I think it's best I stay for the whole thing. I couldn't breathe.
So you won't be walking me down the aisle?
It's not about choosing, Adrian. It's about timing. These things are difficult to reschedule. You understand? He always used words like that, you understand, to end a conversation. To make sure I swallowed the disappointment with a smile. But this time, I didn't. I said nothing. Silence sat between us like fog. He continued, maybe Benjamin's dad could walk you. Or a friend's father. It's the ceremony, but the reception. I hung up before he could finish. That night, I collapsed on our living room floor, my dress sketchbook beside me, the seating chart wide open. Benjamin found me curled up, mascara smeared across my cheek.
I looked up at him and whispered, he chose her. Again.
Benjamin didn't say, I'm sorry. He didn't offer solutions. He just sat beside me, held me, let me unravel without trying to put the pieces back too quickly. Later, as we sat in bed, he asked gently, do you want to postpone? Part of me wanted to.
Move the date. Remove the choice. Make it easy.
But then something inside me hardened. No, I said quietly. That's what she wants. She wants to be the reason I rearranged everything. I won't give her that. The next morning, I got a call from Laura. Benjamin must have told her what happened. She didn't ask for details. She just listened. I can't believe your father would do this to you, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know what to do. I admitted, it's humiliating. I keep thinking about walking in alone, like I'm announcing to the world that even my own dad didn't think I was worth showing up for. There was a pause on the line. Then Laura said, I think there's someone you should talk to. At first, I didn't understand. Then she told me a story I'd never heard before. When I married Benjamin's father, she said, it wasn't my first wedding. I'd been married before, briefly. It didn't work. When I told my father I was remarrying, he said he wouldn't come. He said it embarrassed him, that it was a poor reflection on the family. She exhaled.
Do you know who walked me down the aisle?
I didn't say anything. Jack, she said simply, He told me, "You deserve to be celebrated, not judged." And I never forgot that. I closed my eyes.
Of course. Jack?
Quiet, strong, constant. He wasn't blood, but he had never once failed to show up. Laura continued, "He'd never bring it up himself. He's too respectful. But Adrian, I think it would mean the world to him." I spent the next 24 hours thinking about it, running through every moment Jack had been there, his comments, his curiosity, the way he always made room for me in conversations even when others didn't. That night, I picked up the phone and asked him to meet me for coffee. He said yes, instantly. When I arrived, he was already sitting there with 2 drinks, my usual vanilla latte. Extra shot was waiting for me. I hadn't told him what I wanted yet, but he had a sense about things. We made small talk for a few minutes. Then I took a breath. "Jack, my father's decided not to walk me down the aisle." His eyes softened.
I'm sorry, Adrian. I know that must hurt.
I nodded. Then, gathering every ounce of courage, I asked, "Would you consider walking me instead?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes glistened. He took a slow breath.
Adrian, he said, voice thick with emotion, I can't tell you what that would mean to me. Are you sure?
"I have never been more sure of anything," I said. And just like that, I didn't feel abandoned anymore. I felt chosen, not because someone was assigned to me, but because someone saw me and said yes. The decision was made.
And yet, it wasn't easy.
Even after Jack said yes, after he placed his hand gently over mine and told me it would be one of the greatest honors of his life, I still carried the weight. It's strange how grief lingers even after clarity, because a part of me had always held out hope that my father would surprise me, that one day he'd show up not just physically, but emotionally, fully present, fully mine. But when I told him about Jack, he didn't flinch. He didn't fight for the spot he was giving up. He just said, "I suppose someone has to do it if I can't make it." And that was when something inside me snapped for good. I had begged long enough. I wasn't begging anymore. The final week before the wedding was a whirlwind florist confirmations, guest list, last-minute changes, playlists, vendor timelines. Benjamin and I barely had time to breathe, but through the chaos, I felt calm in one very specific place. Jack! He checked in once a day, never too much, never asking for anything, just simple messages. "Thinking of you. Excited to see the dress. Let me know if you need anything." His presence was a quiet thread that stitched the pieces of me back together. 3 days before the wedding, I made one final call to my father, just to confirm whether he was still planning to attend the reception. "Probably around 7:30, he said. "Vanessa's event might run a little long, but I'll try to swing by. Save me a piece of cake." That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement, just logistics and cake. I thanked him, hung up, and sat in silence. I didn't cry this time. I think my heart had already processed the loss. The real grief had happened years earlier. Now, I was just watching the last page of that chapter turn. The day before the wedding, we held a small rehearsal dinner near the venue, just close friends and Benjamin's family. Jack arrived in a tailored charcoal suit, his silver hair perfectly combed, a worn book tucked under his arm as a gift. During dinner, he stood to give a toast. "To Adrian and Benjamin," he said, raising his glass. His voice was steady, warm, and reverent. Love is not just about finding the right person. It's also about building the right circle around you. Family, chosen and earned, is what anchors us. And watching you both create something so honest, so generous, I am reminded that even after everything, people still find each other and build something beautiful. You could hear Forks pause in midair, glasses half raised. The room hung on every word. And when he sat down, He glanced at me like he wasn't sure if he'd said too much. But I couldn't stop smiling. That night, I didn't sleep much, but for once, it wasn't anxiety. It was anticipation. The good kind. The kind you feel before something important. I woke up at sunrise and watched the city from my hotel balcony as it slowly came to life. Down below, delivery trucks hummed past. Birds flicked across wires. The world was moving, and so was I. By 9 a.m., the suite was buzzing with bridesmaids, hairdryers, and trays of pastries. My college roommate, Sophia, was sipping coffee and humming nervously while getting her curls pinned back. Zoe, my best friend from grad school, was organizing makeup palettes like a general preparing for war. The stylists arrived. The photographers checked lighting. And I just stood in the middle of it all, holding a little blue box Jack had dropped off that morning. He hadn't come in, just knocked once and handed it to the front desk. Inside was a delicate handkerchief, vintage, edged with lace, tiny blue flowers embroidered in each corner. There was a note. My mother carried this on her wedding day in 1930. She gave it to me to pass on when the right moment came. I think that moment is now. With love, Jack. I pressed it to my chest and breathed in. There was something so grounding about the gesture, so full of memory and meaning. He hadn't given me a speech. He'd given me a piece of his own history. And then Laura arrived. She was glowing, elegant in a soft mauve dress, holding a velvet pouch. "I brought something too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Inside was a thin silver bracelet, a single charm, a paintbrush crossed with a pen. "I remember you told me once you loved writing and painting as a kid," she said. "I wanted you to have a piece of that spirit with you today." I could barely speak. These people, they weren't related to me by blood. But they saw me. They knew me. They celebrated me. Around noon, I slipped into my dress. My bridesmaids gasped, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was playing a role. I felt like myself. The fitted lace, the way it hugged my body without hiding it, the pearl buttons, the long veil. Everything had been chosen intentionally, nothing borrowed just to make someone else happy. Jack arrived at 3:15. He looked composed, but his eyes softened when he saw me. "You look radiant," he said simply. He offered his arm. "Ready?" I nodded. We waited behind the doors. Just the two of us. A retired judge and a girl who had once begged her father to come to her art show. Now standing as equals. Now stepping into something new. As the music began, Canon and Die Soft and Sure, I felt something shift in my chest. I wasn't walking away from the pain. I was walking toward something better. And beside me was someone who chose to be there. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because he wanted to be, because he knew I deserved to be seen. And together we walked forward. Into light, into music, into everything that came next. The moment I stepped onto the aisle with Jack, the world fell silent. I could hear the string quartet, soft and slow, playing behind the heavy garden doors. But in my chest, just a quiet, steady rhythm, like my heart knew it was safe now, that it could finally exhale. The guests stood. All eyes turned. But I only saw one. Benjamin? He looked like someone who had never seen anything more clearly in his life. And I couldn't stop smiling. Jack leaned in and whispered, "You've already won." And somehow, I believed him. The ceremony was simple and perfect. No theatrics, just truth. Benjamin and I read the vows we'd written ourselves. Mine weren't about fairy tales or forever. They were about the small things: morning coffee, listening fully, showing up when it's hard. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the applause wrapped around us like a warm blanket. Not just claps, but genuine joy, the kind that lifts you. At the reception, The ballroom shimmered with soft lights and floral centerpieces. Laughter floated through the air. Glasses clinked. Stories were told. I walked through the space like someone who had finally stepped into her own skin. During dinner, Benjamin's father gave a beautiful speech welcoming me to the family, but it was Jack's toast that stopped the room. He stood slowly, steady hands gripping the mic, and cleared his throat. "I'm not Adrienne's biological father," he began, "but I've watched her grow into the kind of woman any parent would be proud to claim." He paused, then added, "And just so we're clear, I do." You could hear a pin drop. He went on to talk about chosen family, about what it means to show up, to listen, to stand beside someone even when they're hurting. He ended with, "Adrienne, walking you down the aisle today was one of the greatest honors of my life." By the time he sat down, there weren't many dry eyes left. I leaned over and hugged him, not out of politeness, but because I needed him to know he hadn't just filled a role, he'd filled a hole. And then, something unexpected happened. My cousin Thomas walked in. Late, hair tousled, tie crooked, breathing like he'd just run a mile. "Sorry," he mouthed as he hugged me. "Had to stop somewhere first." I didn't think much of it, until, midway through dessert, he pulled me aside. "Adrienne, we need to talk," he said, guiding me toward a quieter hallway just off the dance floor. My stomach tightened. He held up his phone. "Vanessa's party today," he said. "It wasn't a real work event." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "She told everyone it was a firm-sponsored celebration for hitting her sales target. Right. A broker promotion." I nodded. Thomas scrolled through some texts, then turned the screen toward me. "She told me weeks ago she hadn't hit the numbers. She scheduled the party anyway. She wanted to create a conflict." I stared at the screen, my sister's words, right there in black and white. "If I schedule it the same day, he'll have to choose. She'll see where she stands. Finally." It was like the floor shifted beneath me. "She did this intentionally," I whispered. Thomas nodded grimly. "I overheard her talking to your dad, too. She's been telling him that you didn't really want him there, that asking him to walk you was just for appearances." My throat tightened. That's why he didn't fight harder. He thought he wasn't wanted. "And she made sure of it," Thomas added. "I tried to tell him earlier today, but she kept pulling him away." I looked at him, eyes burning. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for telling me, for not letting it stay hidden." He hesitated. "There's more." Of course there was. I asked one of her coworkers, someone she claimed helped plan the event. Turns out, no one at the firm knew about it. It was just a gathering at her apartment. Maybe 15 people. Gym friends, a few realtors. That's it. So it wasn't just sabotage. It was a lie. A fully fabricated scenario designed to tear one more thread from my relationship with my father. I stood there for a long moment, my fingers curled around the edge of a pillar, trying to keep myself upright. But surprisingly, I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. Instead, I felt clarity. Sharp, cold, certain. Vanessa didn't want attention. She wanted dominance. She wanted to be the only voice in our father's ear, the only version of reality he could trust. And for years, she had been. But not anymore. I returned to the ballroom with my spine straighter than it had been in weeks. I danced. I laughed. I toasted. And just when I thought the night would end on a quiet, perfect note, at 10:40 p.m., the ballroom doors opened. And there he was, my father, awkward in a suit that didn't quite fit, holding a gift bag in one hand and uncertainty in the other. Benjamin saw him before I did and gave me a look. "Do you want me to handle this?" I shook my head. "No," I said, "I need to." My father walked toward me slowly, his eyes scanning the room like he didn't quite recognize it. "Congratulations," he said, voice tight. "Sorry I'm late, Vanessa's thing ran long. Of course it did. He leaned in for a half hug, then held out the gift bag. Crystal wine glasses. From me and Vanessa. I took it, set it on the table beside me. So, he asked, trying to be casual, who ended up walking you? I looked at him for a beat too long, then said, Jack Harris. His expression faltered. The older gentleman in the tux. The one who gave the toast. I nodded. He shook his head, blinking. You let a stranger take my place. That did it. No, I said calmly. I asked a man who has shown up for me, respected me, and listened to me for years. That's not a stranger. Dad, that's family. He looked stunned. And when Thomas walked up behind me, holding his phone, things were about to get real. My father stood frozen as Thomas handed him the phone. Read it, Thomas said quietly. He did. I watched as his expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something like shame. His mouth opened, but no sound came. She wouldn't do this, he muttered. She did, I said, and it's not the first time. The text thread laid it all bare. Vanessa's words, weeks before the wedding, her plan to force him to choose, her lies about me, her fake promotion. He looked up at me, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. She told me, you didn't really want me there. I nodded once. And you believed her. I'm sorry, he whispered, eyes glassy. I don't know what to say. For the first time in my life, I wasn't desperate for his apology. I didn't need him to fix it. I didn't even need him to explain. I just needed him to finally see. Before he could say more, Jack stepped beside me. My father turned toward him, voice cracking with bitterness. So you replaced me. Jack didn't flinch. No. Adrienne honored me with something you walked away from. She's my daughter. Then you should have acted like it. That landed harder than anything I could have said. My father lowered his eyes. I need to speak with Vanessa. Not tonight, I said. Tonight isn't about her. It's not about you. And with that, I turned and walked back into the ballroom. Benjamin took my hand. No questions asked. That night, we danced under golden lights, surrounded by people who had chosen to love me with no strings attached. Whatever came next, I knew I was finally free. We left the ballroom after midnight, hand in hand, sparkler lights glowing behind us. I didn't look back. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I was walking into something I had built with my own hands. Benjamin and I spent 2 weeks in Greece after the wedding. Just the two of us, ruins, sunsets, quiet mornings, and no distractions. I turned off notifications, left my phone on airplane mode more often than not. I needed distance. From the noise, from the fallout, from the weight of years I'd carried silently. When we got home, there were 5 voicemails from my father. The first few were awkward, rambling, half apologies wrapped in confusion. But the last one was different. He sounded tired, stripped bare. Adrienne, I know I don't deserve your time, but I need to tell you this. I went to Vanessa's after the wedding. I confronted her. I showed her the messages, and she admitted it. All of it. The lies. The manipulation. I can't believe I didn't see it. I can't believe I let her twist my view of you for so many years. I'm sorry. I know I've said that before. But this time I mean it. If you never speak to me again, I understand. But if there's any part of you that can give me a second chance, I'll be here, waiting, listening, hoping. There were no messages from Vanessa. Just a 2-line email a week later. Taking some time away from family drama, traveling for work. Don't contact me. I stared at the screen for a long time, and then I closed the tab. Some relationships can be repaired. Others aren't meant to be. Over the next month, I focused on what was real. I wrote thank you cards, returned to work, cooked dinner with Benjamin, and called Laura just to say hi. Jack called every Sunday, like clockwork, not to ask about the drama, but just to ask how I was. "Have you read anything good lately?" he'd say. Or, "Did you finally hang that painting in your hallway?"
Always small questions with deep roots.
One night, he said something I've never forgotten. "Forgiveness doesn't mean they were right. It just means you're ready to stop letting them hurt you." I didn't respond. I just let that sentence sit with me. A few weeks later, I called my father. We met for coffee in a neutral place halfway between Philadelphia and his town. He looked older, quieter, like the denial had finally melted off his face. We sat for 3 hours. We talked about my childhood, the silence after Mom died, the choices he made, the ones he avoided. He didn't make excuses. He just listened. And at the end, he said, "I want to try. If you'll let me, I want to know the woman you've become, and I want to earn back the right to be in your life." I didn't say yes that day, but I didn't say no either. We started small, calls every week, then monthly visits. Eventually, I introduced him properly to Benjamin's family, even Jack. That first dinner was awkward, but respectful. After the dishes were cleared, I overheard my father speaking to Jack in the other room. "I want to thank you for being there when I wasn't. You didn't just walk her down the aisle. You carried her when I left her standing." Jack's response was quiet. She was never standing alone. She just didn't know it yet. "We're still rebuilding." "It's not perfect." Sometimes I still feel that flicker of old hurt in my chest. Sometimes I look at him and remember all the empty seats he left behind at my recitals, my scholarship dinner, my wedding aisle. But then he shows up on time, present, willing to listen, and it makes room for something new. It makes room for hope. Vanessa has stayed distant. She sends occasional birthday cards now. No apology, no acknowledgement, just short messages written like a stranger. And maybe that's what she'll always be. But that's okay. Because the greatest lesson this wedding gave me wasn't about betrayal, or even revenge. It was about family. Real family. The kind you choose. The kind that shows up. The kind that buys you your favorite latte without asking. That carries a handkerchief from 1930 just in case you need something blue. That sees your mess and doesn't flinch. 6 months after the wedding, we hosted our first Thanksgiving. Our dining room was small, but full. Benjamin's parents, Jack, Thomas, a few close friends, and yes, my father who brought cranberry sauce and helped wash dishes after dinner without being asked. That night, we went around the table sharing what we were grateful for. My father's voice cracked as he said, "I'm thankful for second chances, and for a daughter who gave me one." Jack, sitting beside him, simply said, "I'm thankful for chosen family, the kind that makes you believe again." When it was my turn, I looked around the room, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I said, "I'm thankful for every single person who showed up, in big ways, small ways, quiet ways. You didn't just come to a wedding. You helped me build a life, and I won't forget that." So no, my father didn't walk me down the aisle. But the man who did, he carried me towards something far greater. Not just a ceremony, but a reckoning, a truth, a new chapter. And maybe that's the only kind of revenge that really matters. Living a life so full of love, the people who tried to break you end up irrelevant. If you've ever had someone step in when family let you down, tell me in the comments. Or if you've been that person for someone else. Because trust me, they'll remember. And if this story meant something to you, share it, like it, subscribe. Because sometimes healing begins when we finally say it out loud. Blood doesn't make you family. Love does.